Now, opposition parties in Hungary are uniting to take on Prime Minister Viktor Orban, and they're backing Peter Marki-Zay, a political outsider with no party affiliation, to lead the charge. He's just won an opposition primary over the weekend and will go head-to-head against Orban in next year's parliamentary election. Earlier, we spoke to DW correspondent Arpad Sozi in Budapest. He told us more about Viktor Orban's challenger, Peter Marki-Zay.
Well, he's relative unknown before these primaries happened. He won an election back in 2018 to become mayor of Hódmezővásárhely, a small town in southern Hungary. He actually beat the Fidesz candidate, the Fidesz being the ruling party in Hungary. And so that raised a few eyebrows. His background is that he had also lived for a while in the United States and in Canada, known as a conservative person, has 7 children, believes strongly in family values, is quite religious. A lot of people thought that he's kind of similar to Viktor Orban also, because family values and the nation, etc., come first. That's why it's a bit of a surprise that he beat Klára Dobrev, who is well known because of her husband, Ferenc Gyurcsány, who used to be a prime minister of Hungary and under very tough circumstances lost in an election in 2009 to Viktor Orban, and since then Orban has been in power. So again, Marki-Zay is a bit of an unknown, but now he says that everyone in this 6-party coalition is going to work together to try and defeat Viktor Orban and Fidesz.
Now, observers will say that Orban has benefited in the past because the opposition was so fragmented. Could this be the man now that threatens his re-election bid?
It's too early to tell because he is so conservative. He doesn't exactly match the other very liberal left-leaning policies of some of the other parties in this coalition. So the question is, how are they going to get along on policy matters? What are they going to agree on? What are they going to disagree on? So we've got a number of months until this election is going to happen in April of next year to see who's going to become the next prime minister. There could be a lot of infighting. Basically, they're showing a united front now. And this is how they hope to be able to defeat Orban. Question is, will they be able to get along with each other?
Arpad, I want to ask you, I'm not entirely sure if there's polls into this new challenger, but is there an appetite to take risk on a political outsider in the country right now?
For some people. For the elderly people, I think most of them are pretty well diehard Fidesz supporters. The young people, I don't know a single young person yet who is going to vote for Fidesz, but that doesn't mean that there aren't a number of them out there. There's this also monetary situation where Fidesz has at least saved money for a lot of people and has, through its investment policies and attracting investors, has created a very successful economy. Now, are you going to risk that to go with a relative unknown? You could, and it could turn out very well, or could not turn out very well. The question is, are people going to take a risk? And again, we don't know yet. The polls aren't out on anything like that yet, but they will be coming out. They'll be dealing with that primarily, I would say, because are people willing to take a risk, yes or no?
We can cross now to Budapest, where political science Peter Krejko is standing by for us. Dr. Krejko, how much of a problem is this joint candidate, Peter Marki-Zay, for the incumbent Prime Minister Viktor Orban?
Good morning, and thanks for having me. I do think it's a big trouble for the governmental side, and one important symptom of that the government regards it as a trouble that the public media or the state media instead have been silent about the whole issue. And despite the fact that 850,000 voters participated on the primaries, which is more than 1/10 of the Hungarian electorate. In the state media, there was not even a word about that there is a primary, and still the turnout was pretty high, and the results were quite obvious.
How much of an appetite is there for political change in Hungary among the population?
According to a recent poll by Median Institute, about 47% of the Hungarians would rather favor a governmental change next April, contrary to the 44% who would rather like the government to continue its work. So the population is divided almost 50-50. There is a bit higher chance right now for the opposition to come out as a winner in next April. But first of all, because of the electoral system tailor-made by Fidesz to fit their purposes, will make the opposition important to win with a quite high margin, so 4-5% advantage at least to the government, so that they can overcome all the distortions of the electoral system. And the second thing is that the government has just started a huge spending, pre-election spending, to persuade the voters, and they will do their best to win the election, and it's still half year to go.
Right. So the country's divided. The government has the electoral system slanted in its favor, you suggest. The government is spending heavily. The state media are giving no attention to the opposition. Does the opposition, even with a joint candidate, stand a chance in this election?
They clearly do. And we shouldn't forget that even in the last election, in 2018, the opposition forces gained more votes, 51%, than the government, 49%. But because they were not standing united, there was a lot of lost votes. And because of the nature of the Hungarian electoral system, the relatively strongest force, Fidesz, could win the 2/3 of the mandates. But this time is going to be different. And if the support for the government and the opposition would remain on the same level as it is now, the opposition would already have some chance to win the election, even overcoming some of the distortions of the electoral system. And if they can stand united and do an efficient campaign behind the elected candidate, the government can face trouble. And don't forget that the newly elected candidate for Prime Minister is a conservative politician, that the governmental side will have much more difficult time to paint as a leftist, as a liberal, and the player of George Soros. Of course they try, but it will definitely be more difficult.
Dr. Kréko, thank you very much for talking with us. That was Peter Kréko, a political scientist in Budapest.
Thank you.